Here we go, part 3 of the series. Just as the battle is over, Sayaka and Natsuki arrive at the scene to rescue their friends from the island. Sayaka decides to help La Folia return back to her home country, now that the threat to her, and her blood especially, was gone, while the others return back to the Itogami Island to their normal lives. A few weeks later, and the Halloween weekend is about to arrive. As Yukina and Kojo travel in a packed train discussing their imminent holiday, Kojo gets caught by his teachers, Sasasaki and Natsuki, who believe him to be a molester. Natsuki, however, clears him off the charges after realizing that it's him and lets them go. Elsewhere, 2 witches appear by the port of the island and start attacking the defending forces with several spells, and realize that even after coming back here 10 years later, they were still too badass for the security to handle them. The soldiers recognize the 2 women as the Witches of Ashdown, who are members of the criminal organization known as the Library. Back in the city, Kojo is surprisingly visited by his childhood friend Yuuma, who had visited him almost after 4 years. The tomboyish girl adds a bit of a dynamic to the love triangle that's already secretly going on between Asagi, Kojo, and Yukina. Since Yuuma had visited him after so long, Kojo spends a lot of time with her, and takes her along with his friends to a tower for sightseeing. As they enjoy the view, Kojo receives a call from Sayaka, explaining how some weird things were happening all around the island. For some reason, all doors were leading people from their desired place to another one in an instant. Sayaka and La Foila, who planned to go to the airport, were transported to the other side of the island after entering a door in the airport. Realizing the danger that was surrounding the island and wanting to protect Nagisa and Yuume from all of this chaos, Kojo decides not to get involved with the issue and stays back home with his friend and his sister. Later that night, when Yuume and Kojo are alone, Yuume starts acting like she had a crush on Kojo and even tells him that he was the perfect one for her. Then, taking the opportunity, she quickly gives him a kiss. Man, I wish I had confidence like that. Just as she kisses him, Kojo's eyes start getting blurred and he falls down asleep. A few moments later, when Kojo awakens, he finds that he was actually in Yuume's body and his own body was nowhere to be seen. Quickly, with nowhere else to go, he goes next door to Yukina's apartment to convince her of what had happened to him. He is invited into a room where all of the other girls are pretty chill and do not care what they are wearing, believing him to be a girl. Elsewhere, the island's communications and transportation are in disarray, and Asagi looks into the situation to find that there was no cyber attack happening at the moment. She contacts her colleague, Tank Driver, yes, that's his name apparently, to understand what exactly was happening on the island. As the two discuss different possibilities, Mogwai, the AI that Asagi had created, connects the current spatial anomaly to a past crisis known as the Dark Oath Grimoire incident, perpetrated by the library a decade ago. Back at Yukina's apartment, unable to bear the ladies' indecencies, Kojo announces his true identity. The girls then sit him down and start asking him several questions to confirm his identity. After confirming his identity, they ask him what exactly had happened, and he reveals all the details from earlier, including the kiss that pisses off half of the women population there. Yukina concludes that Yuuma is to blame for all that had happened, and she believes that all of this was somewhat a plan that Yuuma had created. Kojo, however, argues that vampires can't be rid of their eternal curse, which meant that their bodies couldn't be exchanged, so Yuume couldn't have possibly taken her body. But Yukina thinks that perhaps space distortion was how his body was stolen. This just meant one thing: Yuume was a witch, just like and as powerful as Natsuki, who could use space distortion magic. The Ashdown witches lurk with a grimoire atop the Keystone Gate Tower until interrupted by Ardeel. As the witches try to attack Ardeel and make him bow to them, Yuuma arrives in Kojo's body and stops them. She introduces herself to a confused Ardeel as the daughter of the Witch of Notoria. She proposes a deal with Ardeel to release her imprisoned mother, who had been kept in the island's magical high-security prison. She explains that she had stolen Kojo's body so that she could use his power and free her mother, and requests that he doesn't get involved with her plan in any way, neither with nor against it. In turn for all this, she would also release countless powerful monsters and demons whom he could fight and make his life more fun like he always wanted to. Elsewhere, Kojo and Yukina manage to find the witches on the tower and quickly head to the scene, but the transportation anomaly makes it so that they cannot enter the place and instead are transported to a girls' changing room at all times. This all kind of feels a bit weird if you ask me. Fortunately, Asagi solves most of the island's navigational issues and quickly develops a satellite-based navigation system phone app which is sent to Kojo, enabling Yukina and him to travel to the tower to confront the witches. When Kojo and Yukina reach the top of the tower, they notice the skies darken and the whole area filled with dark tentacles of some weird monster. Ardil is still there as well and casually explains the plan that Yuume had set out to achieve. With Kojo's body, she was going to release the barrier to the prison and release all the powerful monsters as well as her mother. After explaining the plot, Ardil vanishes like a coward while the other witches take Kojo and Yukina captive. Soon enough, Sayaka and La Foila manage to arrive at the place by sheer luck and rescue the two from the witches' clutches. As the group is involved in the battle, Yuuma uses the grimoire book to bring the interdimensional prison to the regular human plane. As soon as the prison appears, Yuuma disappears from the scene and heads to the prison, so, in order to stop her, Kojo and Yukina pursue her while Sayaka and La Foila remain back to deal with the witches. Yuume, who now has control over most of Kojo's powers, uses it to release one of his familiars, who brings the prison entirely into this plane. Just as Kojo and Yukina reach Yuume and follow her into the prison, they notice that, at the center of the room, Natsuki, their teacher and the Witch of the Void, was sitting there asleep. Yuume reveals that only killing Natsuki would cause the barrier to break and allow the prisoners of the prison to escape. A battle soon ensues between Yukina and Yuume, which ends with Yukina putting her spear through Yuume's spiritual guardian, and also through her. This somehow breaks the curse, and Kojo and Yukina return back to their own bodies, and Natsuki wakes up as well. Like all anime stories, Yuume, who was pretty much a villain a few seconds ago, regrets her actions, and so they just let her go. Her friends, the witches, however, are taken into custody. Just then, out of nowhere, Yuume's spiritual guardian takes up its sword and slices right through Yuume as well as Natsuki, who immediately falls to the floor. Outside the prison, Ardil appears and is pissed that the plans didn't work. He decides that he would use his own powers to break the prison barrier when suddenly Nagisa, Kojo's sister, who looks to be possessed by the 12th familiar, appears out of nowhere and beats the crap out of him. She gives the man a formal warning of sorts to stay away from Kojo and leaves. Back at the prison, Yuume's wish apparently came true when she didn't want it to happen, as her mother appears from within the depths of the prison. The woman looks way too young to be Yuume's mother, though, and explains that she had birthed Yuume from a weird lab process just like a clone, but not exactly the same. In other words, the two women were actually the same person, with the Witch of Norokia being the original and Yuume being her copy. Since she was the original, the witch proceeds to rip Yuume's spiritual guardian away from her right in front of everyone else. Holding up another grimoire, she explains to Kojo and Yukina how she cursed Natsuki, which partially opened the prison. She had stolen the Witch of the Void's memories and everything that she had experienced, making her useless as long as the curse held true. This made her the Witch of the Void, and if anyone attacked her, the barrier of the prison would also get damaged. With the barrier weakened, 6 of the most dangerous criminals escaped the prison, and all they had to do was kill Natsuki, who appears to have vanished somewhere. Why only 6 prisoners, you ask? Well, the barrier was only partially open, so only the best with the greatest of health and stamina could actually get out unscathed. Elsewhere, after waking from her nap, Asagi walks the streets during the festival where she acquires guardianship of a small child who can only be Natsuki. I mean, who else could that be? It's so uncanny. Unwilling to leave a literal child in the middle of the streets, Asagi takes her in and takes care of her. Back at the prison, the prisoners are tempted to attack Kojo and his injured group, but just then, Sayaka comes in, racing on a tank cart, and all of them escape before being attacked. Kojo then takes his friends to his mother's place, hoping that she can help them as she is a doctor. Kojo's mother, Mimori, however, is pretty weird, just like most of the characters in this anime. Why do I call her that, you ask? Well, she feels up Yuume's chest so that she can help her with her stomach wound. That's why. Kojo, on the other hand, has his own set of problems as Sayaka wants to offer herself to him in a situation like this. As I said earlier, almost all of these guys are weird. The Witch of Notoria then heads to the top of the school, where Natsuki teaches and is confronted by 2 members of her organization, the library. The men ask her to return back to the organization since she was now free, but instead of going back, the witch severs her ties with the organization and brutally kills the 2 men. Back at the lab, the group realizes that since Yuumi was not only stabbed but also revoked of her familiar, aka spirit guardian, there was no research on the topic, and no normal treatment could heal her. She needed someone with immense magical skill, someone like Natsuki who could help her out. While discussing Natsuki, who they believe can save Yuuma, they notice Asagi with a small child on TV and phone her. The call is interrupted by one of the 6 prisoners, Kirika Girika, who has realized that the girl is the young witch of the void. The man starts chasing the 2 girls, but thankfully, with the help of Mogwai, they manage to escape the guy and escape to an entrance of the Keystone Gate. The lean convict follows the 2 there as well, but here, the island and Astarte come to the girl's rescue and apprehend the man, taking him back to the prison cell where he belonged. Their troubles are not over yet though, as another convict called Gigliola Gerardi appears and takes mind control of the island guard detachment, subdues Astarte, and menaces Asagi and Natsuki-chan. This time though, Ardil appears and battles with her for the sheer need of enjoyment. He always enjoys a good battle and is overjoyed that he can use his main familiar against her. The battle, however, ends up quick and leads to the brutal suffering of Gigliola before she is sent back to her cell. Kojo arrives to the scene a bit too late, but is glad that his friends are okay. Ardil then offers a deal. He would guard Natsuki's child form in his boat provided that Kojo comes there as well. The man was still not done with his sus moves, but this was a good plan and Kojo agrees to it. Aboard Ardil's yacht, circumstances compel Kojo into the luxurious baths where he is approached by a ton of women who just can't wait to have a piece of him. They are all scared off by Asagi and Natsuki, however, and the 2 then take a bath with Kojo instead. Apparently, that's a casual thing in Japan. I don't know. That night in their room, the 2 teens continue to bicker. The sleeping child suddenly stands on the bed and identifies herself as Natsukyun, revealing that Natsuki will magically restore herself in 2 hours. However, since the body was not of actual Natsuki, the whole turning back thing was not a good idea, and would probably kill her, and only destroying the witch of Notoria's grimoire could restore her back fully. On the quay outside, Ardil approaches Sayaka and Yukina, who had just arrived there after being notified by Kojo of his location, when suddenly the prisoner brute Dumblegraph interrupts their casual anime chatting moment. The man proves to be quite the strong opponent and matches every one of Ardil's blows with his own, but Ardil soon has had enough and manages to subdue and imprison the convict after a long and hard battle. Another prisoner, Shutora D, appears, only to be similarly reincarcerated by Sayaka this time. Back at the school rooftop, the Witch of Notoria has cast a huge spell and, with her preparations complete, Aya appears and claims Itogami Island, and with the Dark Oath Grimoire, declares an end to any supernatural powers other than her own. She appears before Kojo and his group and witnesses as all of their magic is drained and they are reduced to mere humans. For some reason, however, Yukina proves the exception, but when she attacks, she's teleported into a jail cage. See you on part 4. If you enjoyed the series, don't forget to leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching!